Hello, this is Deborah Anderson, the BlkWmnAnimator, coming back to you with another video. And in this video, I have Layron DeJarnette. Welcome.
Hey, how's it going there?
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. I work in the animation industry, obviously, and I am pretty much do it all. I do character design, I've directed animation, did art direction, illustration, pretty much in storyboards.
Cool. So first question, where are you from and how was it growing up?
Well, I'm originally from Detroit, Michigan, and fellow Detroiter there, 313 in the house. Growing up for me was fun. I had my one good thing about growing up is that my mother and my dad were artists. So very young, when I used to draw things like at an early age, like even at like 3 years old, they would like save my drawings and encourage me to like follow art and things like that. They didn't know if I would necessarily like do it professionally, but I can remember on my 4th birthday, my dad bought me an easel. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know what an easel was. And, at that time I was into like Spider-Mans and action figures and he didn't get me like a lot of the toys that I wanted, but he ended up buying me an easel. And my first thing was like, what is this? And I opened it up thinking toys and things were going to be in it. But he kind of explained to me. And I think that was, for some reason, I remember that point. I was 4 years old. He literally explained to me why he got me the easel and said that he thought that, he wanted to like get me like real artistic things to work with. Like prior to that, I was drawing with crayons and, lined paper, but he wanted to really say, hey, no, we want to save your drawings. We want to make sure you have like paints and pastels and things like that. So it was fun, and then as I grew older, my parents, they put me in like, I took like youth arts classes and they really supported me in the drawing aspect. So I give all my praise and kudos to them.
So can you tell us about the great historical figure that is kind of interspersed in your childhood?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that one more time?
Can you tell us about the great historical figure that is that you didn't realize was so great that you lived by when you were younger? Miss Rosa Parks.
Oh yeah. Oh shoot. Yeah. I'm sorry. I lived across the street from Rosa Parks when I was actually that age. From age 2 to I think age 5 or 6, Rosa Parks literally lived across the street from me. Mm-hmm. And I didn't know her as like the Rosa Parks of the history books, but what she used to do is, and this is actually my first time that I'm really telling like the full story. I kind of hinted on social media that I live across the street, but what she used to do is she would have a whistle and a big bowl of candy, and she will come out like a certain time of the day. I forget, like every time would be the same time of day. And she had one of those big porch patios. Like you walk up the steps and there was like this big porch with an awning. Mm-hmm. And she would come outside. She would have a whistle and a big glass bowl of candy, and she would blow the whistle. And she would blow it like a gym coach, and literally call all the kids over to her porch, and would have us all sit down. And she pretty much like acted like a teacher. Like if some kids were talking or playing or wrestling, she would tell us all to be quiet in a nice way and have us like say, have us sit there. And I remember she had one of those. It was like a picnic table type chair, like one of those wooden chairs, wooden like chairs, but wooden like benches that rock back and forth. And I remember all the kids used to like try to fight and fit on there. And just to let you know how small it was, I can remember like about 4 kids can fit on that thing. Mm-hmm. And once we were settled, she would literally just tell us stories and really give us like lack of a term, beatitudes, would like say, hey, be nice to each other. Don't play in the street. Get a good education. I don't want to see you guys fighting one another. I mean, it was like an everyday thing. And she almost used the candy as like a way to get us there. Because after we sat there and heard all of her wisdom, then she would give us candy and tell us, okay, now go back home, and it would be like this little ritual she would do. And it was just amazing. Like my older sister, I have a sister that's 7 years older than me. And during one time there was a play, Selma, and there was a lady named Rosa Parks. And so my sister's kind of like, this is when I'm a little bit older. She's like, do you know who this is? I said, no, who is that? She's like, that's Miss Parks. I said, that this lady is playing Miss Parks. And that's how I found out. And my sister explained to me, it's like, no, this the lady that lived across the street from us. This is who she is, and this is what she did. And I literally didn't know it until like I turned like 6 or 7 years old. But it was kind of a cool childhood because she was a very nice lady. And again, I'm a lot older, as you can see, and I still have vivid memories of what she did when I was a little kid.
Wow, that's really nice.
Yes.
So you did kind of mention like the kind of programs you do, but can you go more into what was your journey in art and animation during your childhood?
Yeah, growing up, I was mainly into like cartooning and comic books. Those were like the two main things that really interested me. And, you know, I really did. It's like, even though I watched cartoons and read comics, it didn't click early on that I can actually do this for a living. It was just like, well, I like reading Spider-Man and I'm just going to draw Spider-Man, or I like looking at Mickey Mouse and I'll draw pictures of Mickey Mouse. And, you know, people started noticing, wow, at a young age, she's able to like really pay attention to details. A lot of times, again, I grew up pre-internet age, so I didn't have a lot of reference and things to look at. And one of the things that my mom told me when I got older that she really recognized was that I can watch something, like I would draw cartoons based on things that I saw on TV. So if I was watching a Mickey Mouse cartoon, I would draw a picture of Mickey Mouse, but there's no reference material. And she's like, wow, how are you able to like really get the detail and draw Mickey Mouse without even having a picture of it? And I just saw it off TV. And so that was like little things like that. And again, I credit my parents, little things like that. They picked up on that and they were like, hey, we got to make sure that we cultivate this and like nurture this, because this guy actually has a little bit of talent that if we do certain things, he can actually, you know, be pretty good at this thing. So those little things were great. And then just as I got older, I still was into comic books and things like that. And I started seeing like I grew up in a time where, you know, special effect movies were started off cheesy, but then like when Star Wars and Close Encounters, certain like big major motion pictures with great special effects started coming out. That's when the light bulb really clicked on, and I said, hey, I actually want to do this thing, you know. And I started to like have an interest in like special effect makeup type thing, because I would see like creatures and things. And so it was just a bunch of things. It's like I used to like to draw, then I started dabbling in sculpting, and I did a bunch of various things. I'll skip a lot forward. When I got into high school, I had art teachers in grade school and high school that really were like my parents. They saw things and they helped me. And in high school, one of my instructor used to date. I want to say either two things, because it's kind of vivid. She either used to date Sam Raimi of Evil Dead or one of the main makeup effects artists. And she was like, hey, if you really want to get into this, you know, I could set up a time for you to meet, you know, one of these guys. And I said, yeah. And unfortunately, during that time where the meeting was set up, my father passed away. And so his funeral was like on the same day I was supposed to meet with this one of the guys that worked on the first Evil Dead. But what that person did was they loaned me for like a long time. They loaned me like 2 books. And again, this is when I wanted to do makeup effects. They loaned me it was like a pictorial surgery book with a lot of gross stuff. And then they loaned me it was a war book, a war picture book. And then the person, I you know, for some reason, I want to say it was Sam Raimi, but it's either him or like the next guy in command. But they wrote a letter saying that, hey, if you really want to do this, you got to make it look real. You can't fake it. And, you know, I kept those books for maybe almost like a month or so. And, you know, I dibbled and dabbed a little bit in that. But then later on in college, I started to find out that CGI was starting to take over, and the whole practical makeup effects and sculpting wasn't really big. So then I didn't have any knowledge of 3D. So the next thing I did was went back to what I originally liked, which 2D animation. So that's what pushed me more back into 2D animation and things like that. at the time I went to college for creative studies, and they didn't have an animation program necessarily. We had an animation class that was taught by an instructor named Denise Dawson, but it was more like an elective. It wasn't like they didn't have a major at the time. So I started studying animation principles on my own. One of the students at College for Creative Studies had an Illusion of Life book, and they were like, "Hey, I see that you're really into this. You can borrow this." It's like along on my journey, there were always people who kind of saw me doing things, and they like, I think it was just God helping me. It's just like people would help me without me listening it, just because they saw, I guess, the passion and the talent. So she loaned me the book, and I had that book again. I studied that book like it was the Bible, and really practiced my whatever techniques they had. I had like another sketchbook, and I would just literally either copy what was in the book, because at the time I was like, I can't afford this book, so I was like trying to make my own version of it, or just using it as a study. Well, little to my knowledge, later on, a Disney recruiter came to the college and wanted to see like students post up work, and just to get an idea at the time that they were looking to find out like certain other colleges they were reaching out to other colleges to see if they can connect with them and possibly work with the schools, so that when the students graduated, that they would be good candidates for Disney to recruit. So the recruiter's like, okay, we were in one room, and he wanted all the students to put up all the work. And me and a few other students, our work literally stood out like a sore thumb, because we were literally posting like animation principles and things versus like more illustrative or fine art type things. Even though the other work was good, I know they were looking for like more animation principles. So the recruiter's like, hey, how come you guys have this stuff and some of the other students don't have it? And my explanation was, well, I studied from the Illusion of Life book, and practice, and I used to watch movies and just draw little thumbnails, like do my own personal study, and that led to my connection with Disney. From that, I ended up getting 2 internships at Disney. One at the time, the first one was in when Disney, the big hat building that's now. Well, they were actually building that. They were like putting that together, so that building wasn't open yet. And a lot of the animations, part of the animation of Disney, they were at like all these portables across Glendale. So I had an intern there, and then that internship led to me having an internship in Disney, Florida. And from that, and I think this is the second time I ever said this in an interview, because it's kind of personal, but I'll say it again. But it's they actually had a job to offer to work on Milan when I was in Florida, but something similar to the thing with meeting with the guy from Sam Raimi. My mother ended up passing away.
Wow.
Oh, no, baby batch. She didn't pass away yet, but she ended up getting real sick. That's what it was. She ended up getting real sick, and I ended up being her caregiver, so I couldn't move to Florida and take on the Milan job, but I was still always in contact with like people at Disney and things like that. And which led to me actually teaching at College for Creative Studies because of that connection with Disney. Disney actually didn't connect with the school at the time, but they were connecting with me, and actually College for Creative Studies ended up hiring me to teach a class called 2 classes, Drawing for Animation and Anatomy for Animation. So it was more like, even though the school wasn't necessarily selected by Disney, still we were kind of in there to where some students from CCS ended up getting jobs at Disney, through learning some of the things I was teaching, and then some other teachers started to do their curriculum to gear students towards animation, which was great. And from that, and this is I'm kind of weaving the web, but I'm almost done. But from that, a lot of some of my students were getting jobs at the industry. Even though I had my connections, they were making their own personal connections, which in turn, through my connection with them, gave me more connections. And everyone's kind of like, you have to move to California. You have to move to California. You can't, because I was freelancing and kind of doing things in Detroit, but everyone's like, man, you will really do well out here. So eventually my mother ended up passing away. And when when she died, that's when I decided it's like, okay, well, that was the reason why I eventually stayed, was to care for my mom. But then after she passed away, literally the year later, I moved out to California.
Yeah.
And when I moved out here, it's funny, when I moved out here, that was when we had the animation industry was going through the recession, where like all the jobs, the 2D animation jobs were kind of like, dying out. But one of the cool things is that I did have some contacts. And while I was in Michigan, I did do like freelance work in, Michigan's sort of the Motor City. So a lot of the jobs I worked on were car commercials. So my animation reel, even though I had like some traditional 2D animation, maybe good for like feature or TV, the bulk of my animation reel at the time was commercials. And so, even though the studios were shutting down or sending things overseas, a good thing was happening, that Klasky Csupo had started their commercial division. And so they were looking for artists and people to work at Klasky Csupo. And so I sent my reel there, and they thought it was pretty good because, again, I had a lot of commercial stuff. So my first job that I got when I moved out here was at Klasky Csupo Commercials. A guy named John Andrews hired me, Liz Seidman. They were like my supervisors, and they're very great people. I mention names because at least through my journey, even when I was younger, I always had people that would really like unsolicited, would like just reach out and like kind of help and guide me and like introduce me to people or take me under their wing and show me some things. Because again, I never technically went to school for animation. Everything was, I wanted to be, while I went to school at CCS, I had it was for illustration. So I do have a strong background for like realistic, like illustration things, because at that time, that's where I thought I would be able to really get a job in. It's like the animation business and all this other stuff. Only certain people get those jobs, but most people get these type of jobs. So I never, that was always like my plan B. It's kind of like, okay, if the animation stuff doesn't work, at least I have this illustration background. But yeah. Klasky Csupo was the first job. And like in how animation works is that when you get in, and if you do well, and if you make connections, one job always leads to another job, which leads to another job. And sort of, it's kind of like, it's always good to network and make connections in the industry, because you never know, and I know you've interviewed people. It's like, you can be working with someone who's a PA, and then the next job, they can be like, running it, they can be,
right.
It's you can go from being the low person to the top person in a matter of seconds. So it's always good to keep great relationships and really, work as a team. I never could understand people with egos in the animation industry. You can have it it's like I'm a book illustrator and I'm the only person illustrating a book. I have no one to help me. Yeah, but it's like everyone knows animation is a team effort. Everyone has a part to play. So it's always good to have a certain teamwork mentality, of course, be, not take abuse from people, but still be professional, work and make connections, because you never know.
Yeah, that's like with young people who are networking, they're always trying to kind of reach the people at the top or something like that. And it's like the people right next to you or even below you could help you in like a matter of a year or so.
Yeah, you're literally, and I'm not exaggerating, you're literally like two people away from whoever, one or two people away from whomever you want to like reach in the animation industry. It's such a, and I found that out because, I come, like when I came in, some of the older guys were helping me, but now there's a lot of younger people than me that are in the industry. And same thing. It's like, I'll work with them. And then through them, I'll meet someone else. It's like, oh, it's like, it's literally so connected and everybody knows everyone, but you're literally like two people away from knowing or getting a contact to whomever you want to like meet or talk to.
Yeah. So, what kind of artists were your parents?
Well, my dad was it's funny, my dad drew, but he didn't really pursue, like none of them did it professionally. They just kind of did it on their own. But my dad, he drew, his drawing was, I would say, like from my, you know, professional rating artist perspective, I would say he was kind of like one of those guys that got A's or B's in art school, but like you put that up against someone professionally, and then that A B turns into more like a C. But
Yeah.
he was actually pretty good. He was able to like do certain details. And me growing up, I was so fascinated that like my dad drew like a human head.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like when I was younger, my main drawing was cartoons and superheroes, so they were always like not realistically drawn. But I remember he drew like this head, and it blew me away. It's like, wow, he's such a great head. But one of the things that he was really good at also is that he was into audio. Like he had a sound for like music, and
Mm-hmm.
you know, he would buy certain things to like make our like before surround sound was surround sound, we had surround sound. He literally like built it and made it and put speakers on the walls and around the room. And that was his like passion and hobby outside of work.
Mm-hmm.
My mom, she actually, same thing. She drew, and
Mm-hmm.
her thing was she wanted to do fashion design. You know,
Mm-hmm.
she never pursued it, but she was actually really good. You know, her drawings, like if you look at, or if you remember like how fashion designers, they always have like this super skinny, tall
Mm-hmm.
figure. It's sort of a stylized way of drawing. She had a lot of drawings like that.
Mm-hmm.
And she would do things. And I can remember early on when I used to draw, like some of the things, like if I got impatient with a drawing and this is like, I just don't want to do it, she would literally like finish it up for me. and sometimes it would get to the point where she might think that like I might draw something. And again, I'm like a little kid. I'm like elementary school age. I would draw something and maybe it's like I'm not really done with it. It's just, I'm going to work on it whenever. And she would literally sometimes get it and she'll draw. And now I'm like, Mom, why did you draw my drawing? I wanted to do this. And she was like, well, she's like, I thought you were not going to finish this. And so she would do like things like that. And I kind of think that she vicariously lived like her drawing passion through me, because it was one of those things where it's like at that age, you know, video games, all the things that all of my friends had, my parents would never get me. But if it was like some expensive markers or, you know, something that had to do with art, they will always make a way to do it. I remember like there were these markers that was like, they were really good. They were like, the first time I ever saw brush markers, they were really thick, but they were like real expensive too, because they were like Copic markers or Copic, however you pronounce it. But they were like those, and I remember when I saw them in my mind, I wanted them, and I was thinking my parents are not going to get me this because they cost a lot. And so one day I was in the store. And you know how in the art store, they have it where you can just like grab markers and just play around. I started like drawing things with them. And in my mind, I'm thinking I'm going to convince them to get it to me because I drew something and I'm going to show my mom. And I'm going to say, see, if I had these markers, I can do more stuff like this. But I didn't even have to do that. They were like, wow, these are some great markers. And so what we used to do is the art store, we would go like every month or every other week. It was more like for me to get a set each time I would go, and I would she was like, they're like, pick whatever colors. And that's how we got it. You know, even though they couldn't afford, like for me, afford to buy a huge set, they like, would just grab like, I think it was 4 markers each time we went. And then if they had more money, I could get 6 markers or 7 markers. But eventually I was able to make a full set. But those are like great memories, because I truly honor and appreciate they saw that, because I've met people where that's not their case. It's kind of like, you know, people say they wanted to do this or be an artist, and at that time I didn't really even want to do that. They just cultivated it. But I've met people throughout in the industry who don't have that story. You know, hey, my parents, man, they wanted me to be this, and I had to rebel. So I'm really grateful and appreciate that my parents did that, because again, you know, I could have had a different journey and been doing something totally different than what I'm doing now.
Yeah. So I'm going to list some of the projects that you've worked on. So this part of the video is like for people watching to be like, oh, somebody Black worked on that.
And I'll probably give some shout outs, because I tell people a lot of jobs that if you're going to mention, are because of great people. that I've met and connected with. So I might do some shout outs as well.
And there are most likely more stuff that you worked on, but IMDb only puts stuff. Yeah. So I want to start off with the Disney One Saturday morning bumpers, because I remember the jumping one when I would watch TV. When I saw that you did that, I was like, I remember that.
Yeah, that was at Klasky Chupo. That was one of the things that I worked on, and it was all traditionally hand drawn animation type thing. And I shout out a couple of names, but another guy who really helped me out was Walter Santucci. He was another guy that really helped me, saw my art and pushed for me to be at the studio as well. Yeah, that one was part of Klasky Chupo commercials. The funny thing is how that one was drawn. That was totally old school, where they had to they Xeroxed or printed out the live action of the kids, and everything was kind of like on a pegboard, back in the day, in the light box, and on the table. And so I had to draw the number one with the printouts of the live action so that everything kind of matched and lined up. And I had to look what was actually okay, because the one didn't really interact like a Roger Rabbit thing. A lot of times, I think they printed out every 12 frames. It was like they didn't have to do every frame because the character didn't touch or interact. But I remember there was every 12 frame or something. It was a big frames, and I had this big stack of live action, and I just put it down and drew my one and make sure the one and everything lined up. And they did the same thing. It's like they took those, scanned them in. During this time, the color was done through computer. They would scan it in and computer color it and composite it all with a lot. Yeah, but that was at Klasky Chupo, if I'm pronouncing that right.
Yeah, and the Proud Family, Punisher opening title sequence, Fresh Baked Video Games, Lunatics Unleashed, Buddy and Andy short, Monster High, both New Ghoul at School and Fright On, Leapfrog, the Amazing Alphabet Amusement Park short, Best Friends Forever, The Ricky Gervais Show, Teen Titans Go, Angry Little Asian Girl, Barbie, B Super Motion Comics, Monster High TV series, Attention Deficit Theater, Marvel's Avenger Assemble, Black Panther's Quest, Richard Lovely, Avengers Assemble, Venom Files, The Secret History of Venom, Marvel's Spider-Man, Maximum Venom animated shorts, Central Park, and you're working on the Proud Family reboot. And then you're Garbage Pail Kids artist. You illustrated 5 Jeff Foxworthy New York Times bestselling books. You illustrated a couple Williams Brothers books and some Marvel and DC trading cards, amongst other things.
Yes. So yeah, and I would say the bulk of that work, I tell you, one of my favorite quotes is being lucky. Lucky is being prepared when opportunity knocks. And a lot of those jobs was that I was prepared when that opportunity knocked. I have mentors, like one of my mentors, you've interviewed him, is Ron Myrick. And to make a long story short about Ron Myrick was that I connected with him is because I met his son. And I didn't know his son was I didn't know anything about as far as him being connected with Ron Myrick, but me and his son connected. And one day his son found out that I did art and was like, hey, my dad does art. And he mentioned Ron's real name, Emery. And it didn't connect because I knew Ron Myrick, but it was like, Emery, I don't know. And one day he took it to Ron, and that's how I got connected to Ron. He held on to it until he was able to find work for me. And I remember the first time that I really met him. And it was one of those things like, man, this is God looking out again, is that he said that he was at Warner Brothers, and he called me in and said, hey, he held on to my portfolio for a while, and he said he didn't want to call me until he had something to offer. And he said, I'm calling you in to give you an opportunity because I like your work. And my son said you had a good spirit. And it was one of those things. It's kind of like I never knew that connection would lead to this. same thing with the Proud Family. It's one of those things where, one of my friends was friends with Bruce Smith. And he's like, hey, I'm having lunch with Bruce. You want me to show you a portfolio? And he's like, I said, yeah. So I gave my portfolio, and Bruce, he hired me to work on the original Proud Family, and I did like some character designs. But the main job that I did was they had a cartoon strip for the Disney Adventures magazine, and put me on that. And I had, what was great about working on that strip is that I was able to draw all the characters in various situations. And so then when the new Proud Family series was happening, again, right place at the right time. I was at a BlkWmnAnimator event, and if people are not familiar with BlkWmnAnimator, you guys need to connect. They have, Discord. They have a Facebook page. It's Black.
Yeah, you're always posting in the Facebook group.
Yeah, it's Black N with a letter N Animator. So connect with that group. They had a function at Disney, and Bruce was there. And so I talked to him a little bit on like social media periodically, but I hadn't really connected with them. And again, I reconnected with him at that event, and at the time he knew what was coming through the pipe, but I didn't know what was coming through the pipe. It's kind of like, I've seen you've been posting some art online. I really like it. And that's another thing I said, I was posting a bunch of stuff on Twitter. I don't really have a lot of Twitter followers and things like that. I didn't have a lot of people liking my stuff, but you never know. He was looking. He saw that I was posting some stuff. Say, hey, I really like some of that stuff. I got something coming up. Let me get your info. Then later on, I think a couple of months later, that's when I get the contact that, hey, they're doing the new Proud Family show. A lot of things like that, and I'll mention one other person because I need to let people know you got to have connections. Another person who was really, really helpful, and I consider my mentor, like Ron Myrick. It's like my mentor guy. Obviously, Bruce Smith is definitely a mentor. I've learned a lot from him. And Larry Houston. Larry Houston is also, I've worked with Larry, and then just Larry has all of them have kept in contact with me, but Larry has really, like, even when we're not working, he sends like emails and things like that. So it's always good to get that connection and inspiration. All those guys and many others, they inspire me as an artist. And I always say it's like a creative energy. It's kind of like when you're playing as a team, it's kind of like one team member can inspire another person to finish the job, and that's how I am. It's like, if I see this artist doing well, my attitude is like, I don't get jealous. Like, I see people say, oh man, I'm so jealous of you, you're so good. No, that pumps me up. Right. It's kind of, wow, especially when I physically started working in the industry and started seeing, wow, this guy drew this from scratch out of his head. It's kind of like it blew me away. But it was like, oh, it can be done. You always see the finished product, and for me, it was a disconnect. It's like, yo, I'm seeing this awesome animation. I know awesome people did it, but there's still this disconnect about how they did it and what all went into them doing it. And then when I physically saw, like, wow, this guy did it because they studied A, B, C, D, E, or they watched this film, or they read this book. And I started seeing, like, oh, okay, well, if I do certain things that they've done, then possibly I can get to that level as well. So every time I see good art and good artists or good movies, comics, whatever, if it's just something that's really good, it inspires me to, like, up my game up. That's why if you look at my website, I do a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, you do.
It's kind of like, even though I say, oh yeah, I wanted to do animation growing up, I still do illustration and, various styles of animation and illustration, just because I love art, and I love good art, and it's one of those things where I think we need to encourage each other and, tell people, people who want to get in this industry. I tell you, when I first started, even though I did draw like cartoon things when I was young, because my college taught me so much about like realistic stuff. A lot of my drawing I had to like retrain myself to like do more cartoony stuff. And so like the first stuff that I had starting out, you would look at him like, man, if you judged it based on that, you would say, well, this guy would never be able to draw like Proud Family type characters. Those, you need to work more at Marvel and do more of the superhero stuff. But I just push myself. And a lot of times me pushing myself is looking at other artists. When I'm working on a job, and if I'm not directing it and I'm working on other directors and people, it's hard, but I try to do this. I try to get into the mind of whoever's in charge. If there's a director, a creative director, a creative supervisor, I try to get in their mind. It's like sometimes they might ask me, hey, how would you interpret this? But if that's not the case and I'm following someone else's lead, then I say, okay, well, how would they interpret it? And one of the ways that I try to learn is I just watch them. There's a lot of nonverbal communication in art that helps me grow as an artist. That's why I love to sit and watch artists draw, and it's like, oh, okay, that's how they're drawing ahead. That's their way, because just watching artists draw, for me, I can, as an artist, I can internalize it and say like, oh, this is why they're making that shape or drawing it, drawing it this way. So it helps me, it's like all verbal, nonverbal, seeing good art, being around great people in animation, it all works together to bring forth to make me a better artist and hopefully, bring forth great art.
Yeah. Like this past school year, I taught at a high school, and when I had a new student, he came like not even halfway. He came a little bit past halfway through the school year, and so I taught Blender, and I'm like a Maya person, and so I would have to, I'm teaching Blender, I would have to learn what I'm teaching the week before. And so when he came in, there was some stuff that you can do in Maya that I couldn't figure out how to do in Blender. So I would ask my student do you know how to do this? I would take him into a breakout room while the students were working. Do you know how to do this? And he's like, oh yeah, you do this. I'm like, okay, cool. We're gonna do this tomorrow for those students. So it's not like even because I've heard about people when they were in school, their teachers were jealous or kind of treated them away because they knew more. And I'm like, you know more than me? Teach me, and then I don't even have to do it. You do it. Yeah. I don't even have to act like I knew how to do it. Okay, he knows how to do this. Show them.
It's one of the great thing about art, I think, is that it's always evolving. And I'll use a company like Industrial Light and Magic, for example. When they were working on that early, even now, they if you watch featurettes, they kind of say the same thing. But you watch those old featurettes about when they were working on Star Wars or some of those early movies. They were like, we didn't have the computer. We had to make the computer. They were like, oh, this was in the storyboard, but we had no idea how to execute it. So what you were saying, it's like, no, you had a bunch of creative people come together and they're like, okay, we got to make this, we got to do this. I don't know how we're going to do it, but all of us creative people with our genius and our art, we're going to come together and we're going to create something. We're going to actually make this thing happen. And Industrial Light and Magic created all type of things that are now commonplace now. Right. Like a lot of things that we as artists see commonplace, even the computer and things like that. That's like, oh, I'll just go get me a, iPad and get Procreate. Well, someone had to create Procreate. Someone had to create Photoshop. Someone had to figure it out so that we can have it work for us. So I appreciate artists. When I used to teach, some of my students were like, I'm still real cool with them because I told them, funny thing was I started teaching when I was 25. So a lot of the students thought I was a student, right. but I used to tell them, I'm like, no, we're all artists. It's just, I just have this job, but what you do and what I do, we're all the same. It's, cause I used to tell them, I got my first animation job when I was a sophomore. And my instructor at the time, she told me something that I told my students. They were like, she's like, her Denise Dawson. She's like, hey, you're gonna get a call from an animation. I mean, from a company that's looking for someone to do some animation. I recommended you, and you're not going to tell me you're like my student. When they ask you what you do, tell them you're an animator. You know, you do animation because that's what you do. You know, even though you're in my class and you do animation, you know, outside of my class, you do animation. You know, you're my student, but you're still an animator. So don't tell them that. Just let them know that you do animation. And that's what I tell my students. Like, hey, you know, even though you guys are here, you know, what's great about art is that the art speaks for itself. You know,
Right.
Sometimes, you know, degrees and you know, whatever accolades, academic accolades help, but the bottom line is you can have all type of degrees, all type of whatever from an institution, but if your artwork sucks,
Right.
you're only going to get so far. You know, it's like you can be an artist that doesn't have the traditional training. Because like I said, I didn't go to animation school. You know, my background, if I had my portfolio, all my portfolio was to if I hadn't did anything outside of the college, the college portfolio was for me to be an illustrator.
Right.
You know, illustrated portfolio, not an animation portfolio. The animation portfolio came because I did all that stuff outside of school, which, you know, again, I don't know, but I'm thinking if I was disciplined enough, I could have did that stuff without even being in school and possibly still have the same route. So you never know. You know, nowadays it's so much inspiration you can have that I do recommend you going to an art institution, because there are certain like I learned how to be disciplined and professional, and you know how to accept constructive criticism and harsh critique. You know, a lot of times, you know, egos get in the way, but I think that helps. But you're disciplined and you can do it. That's what's great about this industry, is that the artwork speaks for you. You know, your portfolio tells how great you are. You know, whatever you say you can do as an artist should be reflected in your portfolio. It's like, I don't have to tell people I can draw this particular drawing or this style. It's like, no, you see, you can say I can draw it because I'm presenting it in the portfolio.
Right. Yeah. And earlier you mentioned like the nonverbal cues in art. And, you know, when I worked in South Korea at an animation company and people were like, oh, you weren't fluent? I was like, nope, I tried. And they were like, how did you work at an animation company? I'm like, it's art. like if you just learn some colors and make it bigger, make it smaller, like it wasn't even that hard. like it just was, I don't know, it was art. I mean, I tried to, like, they spoke broken English, I spoke broken Korean, so we tried to communicate that way. But other than that, I just had, okay, this is the 2D version, I need you to make it 3D. That's it.
But you were speaking a common language, you know.
Yeah.
The art, people understand it. You know, if you're able to draw it or like you said, do it in 3D and communicate that, and that's the bottom line. You know, that's why I love it. You know, that's why I love. You know, art has its ups and downs. For me, I'm one of those artists that I'm probably the most hardest on my own work. I really like the self-critique. I'm like, I tell people, like, sometimes I say, well, maybe that's why I am who I am, because I'm such a stickler for my own art. And sometimes if I'm supervising, I might go in and be a little stickler, but it's more to help. You know, a lot of people who like what's good about working with Bruce Smith is that he has the eye. He has that eye. He knows what he wants. And I actually worked with Lauren Faust as well from, you know, My Little Pony. And other people. What's great about them is that they have an eye and they know what they want. And when they are supervising or directing, they're like a teacher. So for me, I grow and I learn more as an artist, because I understand, like, it's not like, oh, just make it blue because I said make it blue. No, they'll say make it blue, and then they'll let you know why it needs to be blue. So now you're understanding. It's kind of like, oh, okay, now I understand why that has to be blue, or why this has to look this way. So that when you're working on other jobs, or, you know, once you're done working with them and you're doing your own thing or whatever, you can apply a certain knowledge that you learned from working under those type of directors to your own stuff.
Yeah.
And I love that. I love working with like directors and people like that, because again, you know, I'm a sponge. You know, I try to you know, absorb everything, and then I like to, you know, even like I said, when I'm over, or if I'm directing or supervising, I tend to go that route to make everyone, understand.
Yeah.
I always said, as you know this, by working with a team, you're only as good as your team.
Yeah.
You can have all the freaking artistic skill. You could be a super bad artist and you can have all this stuff, but if your team doesn't possess that same quality and you all working on the same project, it's only going to go so far. So someone needs to come in, to be the coach and to encourage and to, like I always say, it's like people, a lot of times artists have the skill. They have the skill. They just need that coach. It's like,
yeah,
the coach may not be a Michael Jordan, but the coach may be able to tap into someone who has the potential of being Michael Jordan to unlock that talent. And that's how I look at it. It's like, you get a group of people, a lot of times you're hired because you're capable. It's not, they're not going to hire you if you can't do the job. And so sometimes, even myself, you get this, well, I don't know what to do. But then you have those people, like I said, like Bruce Smith and, Lauren and all these other people. And even I work with Craig Kilman. He's the same way. It's like when you have, and the common denominator is that they also are really good at drawing. That's like they draw and they communicate well and they direct well. But if you have all those people in your corner and they're able to push you, that's why their work looks so good. That's why the stuff is amazing, is because it's not a me game, it's a we game. It's right. A team game. It's like, you know what? Hey, if this player, if you're on a basketball team and the fifth man is messing up, you're not going to be like, oh, okay, well, we're all better than you and we're just going to do our position. No, you're to win the game, you're going to be like, hey, you're going to do whatever you have to do to get all team members up to speed, so that you can win the game. And that's how I look at it as far as art and animation, especially animation. It's impossible to like really have crazy eagles in animation.
So you have mentioned several stories. So if you just want to kind of go back to those, or if you want to mention something new, but what has been your biggest breakthrough in your career? Or have there been multiple breakthroughs?
I would say, man, there's multiple breakthroughs, but the biggest breakthrough.
If you prefer to go to multiple, then you can do that. But
yeah. Well, obviously, meeting the people I mentioned, meeting Ron Myrick, Larry Houston, Bruce Smith. Did I write a bunch of names? Let's see, Craig Kilman, Lauren Faust. I like Tari DeHillihay. He's my man. All these guys encourage me. There's a guy that I work with a lot named Kyle Jolly, who's a producer. Howard Swartz, who's I met him at Warner Brothers, but he's at Marvel Animation is different now. It's like Marvel Studios, but at the time he was at Marvel Animation. Eric Radomski, March Dean. Man, there's so many people, and I know I'm forgetting some real good ones, but there are so many folks who just meeting these type of people and working with them it's like working on the jobs or working with them it takes me to another level in my career. So those are breakthroughs. Connecting and meeting young artists, I think, are great too. Because I get encouraged by them and they get encouraged by me, and folks email me out the blue and with questions, and sometimes I'll answer and do things like that, and just to see like this person get a job or that person, like when I'm looking at credits, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember that person first started out, now they're directing, or or a lot of things that's been happening with me is that I've been seeing like creators properties become like sold to like HBO, like those guys, Sanford Green and the Bitterroot crew. It's like, man, I remember when he was working on that, and now it's going to be a HBO show, or or another artist. I see like, oh, their show got picked up by Netflix, or this show got picked up by that. I'm kind of in the same boat. I'm working on my own personal properties, but the thing with me is that I always keep putting mine on the shelf and working on other stuff because I have so much other things going on. But I like the fact that now in this day and age, man, this is like a some person said it's like a new I don't know which age it is, golden or whatever, but it's sort of like a new age of animation where, because there's so many outlets and so many people looking for stuff, like everyone wants their version of the other studio has. And because of that, more artists are given opportunities for work, and also creators are given more opportunities to like actually have their creation greenlit and produced, and be able to be on like a network or a streaming service. So I think it's really great, right now for artists, because again, back in the day, they did have a lot of work, but then there was so much stuff that you wouldn't, I guess, trying to create your own idea.
Mm-hmm.
It was just like, you get a job working on Disney, you're going to be working on Disney properties, Warner Brother properties, and Hanna-Barbera properties. But now, with the other outlets, you can actually have your own idea, even through we got crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Even if you don't go the route of pitching it to like people, you can still get your stuff out there and put it on YouTube or your own, website. So, and I follow those things too. There are a lot of like good YouTube animators that have their series, and it's just, some of that stuff is just as good as stuff you watch on, on the other streaming platforms.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So this is like a quick thing that I saw on YouTube. How was your experience being on Storage Wars?
Oh, that was well, long story short is that the Storage Wars people contacted me. Originally, they wanted to get like the original artists who worked on there. They were actually looking for like two of them, the main two artists who worked on Garbage Pail Kids, but one lived in New York, and there was another one that lives out here, but he didn't want to do it. So at first, I was kind of like the middleman. And then, ironically, they found out I lived near the storage unit that they found the place. So they're like, "Oh wow, you're like less than an hour away from the storage unit." So those guys don't want to help us anyway. So we'll just come with you. And the thing I tell people about reality TV is that it's obviously is unscripted, but the thing that it was my first time. Actually my second time being on the reality show. The other time, my image wasn't there, but my art was there. There was a show called, what's it called? Trailer Park Makeover or something like that. And they filmed me doing some artwork, but they ended up cutting it and just put up the artwork. But on the Storage Wars, it was one of those things where they kind of let you know certain things are happening, but they don't. But they don't show you it until you're on camera. So that, like for instance, if they're filming in the house and someone comes to my door, I'm not going to go to the door because it's like, hey, they're filming, so I'm not going to go. But so they'll say, no, if someone knocks at the door, we want you to go to the door because we want it's someone that you need to meet. So it's one of those things. It's like they can't not tell, they don't tell you things, but then they tell you little things like that. And working with them as well is like, it was just surreal, just one of those things. Like I never imagined. I thought that I would be on something like that. And the experience was they were in my house for like 3 hours and of shooting, and the clip is they edited down a whole lot of footage. But it was cool. I thought it was great,
How are you able to move back and forth between various drawing styles?
That's because my jobs were in commercial. My first professional jobs were all commercial type jobs where I worked at agencies where every job was a new style. And the thing is that these agencies had like a roster of illustrators or animators that they worked with, so that okay, we got this style, so we're going to call this person, or here's this style, we're going to call that person. And I was like, okay, well, if I can do the style, then they won't have to call someone else to come in, and then I would be out of work. It was one of those things. And then at some point, sometimes I became, when I was really younger, young in the industry, is that I became that person where it's like, oh, we can't afford that top artist. Hey, can you do this style? And I did a lot of work like that where it's kind of like, oh, we want you to do Alex Ross style. We want you to do this top artist style. We don't want to pay them, but can you do this style? And a lot of times, it was hit or miss, but it helped me to, be able to adapt to various styles. That's all from working in commercials.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Can you talk about your company, Gomboyo Animation, and what you're doing there?
Yeah, that was that's where I what I mentioned. I'm working on my own personal IPs. That's what that is. Gomboyo is my own. It's not like an animation service company. That's just like my website and company where I'm developing my own IPs to either pitch or produce my own self. What's good about working in the industry is that you do meet people who know how to get stuff done and make things look great. So, I'm knock on wood. I'm simultaneously doing that. And like I said earlier, a lot of times I've unfortunately pushed that stuff back because I'm working on other major projects. But that's what that website is that I have lots of ideas that I've had for some for decades, and I write them out, jot them down, and they get put away. But now I'm starting to develop some of them, and that's what that website is to showcase those IPs and possibly, once things get done, they will have if you go to the site, some of them I want to do crowdfunding for to be able to produce, but that's what that website is to showcase my IPs.
Like, what is your inspiration for some of the characters like Rev Little and the cast of My Folks? And I'm not sure, is it Darrell Harrell, or I don't know how to pronounce that, but
well, the My Folks is definitely based on me and like my family and people I've grown up with. Certain things like if I'm out and around, and I'm from Detroit, so there's a lot of great people and interesting people that I thought would be great. It's like, this we have you from Detroit. It's like, Detroit has its own flair, has its own, and my thing is I wanted to, I always wanted to highlight that because I never saw it. I never saw that style. We have our own style. We have our own flair. We have, in some instances, we have our own lingo. What up, though? It's native to the city. So My Folks is sort of a inspiration from growing up in Detroit and growing up around great people and friends and family and other experiences as well. Let's see. Growing up too, I used to love horror movies and fantasy, things like that. And so I'm sorry, I'm laughing because I had a thought, but the Pastor Pat is that it's a
Exorcist.
It's one of those things where it's a comical, maybe dark comedy type thing of this pastor who's an exorcist, and the whole thing is about him and his adventures, going on these supernatural adventures, dealing with the supernatural, dealing with craziness, and I thought that would be kind of cool and kind of funny, if I had the right people in place, because I know they're like horror fans, horror comedy fans, sort of like was it Shaun of the Dead, and where you have it's like you have the horror, but you have like comedy, but then it's like serious. A little bit seriousness attached to it. That's what Pastor Pat's about. Daryl Harold is a preschool show. The name, I love Daryl Harold because Harold is actually a family name. I have sister's name is Harold, and I have family members' last name is Harold. I loved it because originally I wanted to do a show about a Black boy. Not saying that there are not a lot, but I'm a Black male, so there are plenty of writers and plenty of female shows that I know can do better justice than I can. But I wanted to do a preschool show that's centered around a Black kid, and the whole premise of that is that he's a problem solver. The show would be more, like I said, like more of like a PBS, Disney Junior type of series where the main character. He does have other cast of characters, but they go on problem solving missions that help develop, like it will teach kids how to solve problems, how to come together, and if something is too big, how to come together and, use your creative minds to figure out things. And it's one of those things. I don't want to give away too much, but that's pretty much what that is. And that one there as well, I'm developing that one. That one's actually to the point where I can pitch it. The pitch packet is ready, but I also wanted to do, my thing is I also wanted to do like some animation, because a lot of the shows that I've seen that really go on fire is that they kind of have a taste of what you're going to get, and that's what I actually want to do that with all of them if I could, is that I want to have like the premise, the pitch packet. And if I do crowdfunding, you get a taste of, hey, this is, if you support it, this is how the final product is going to look. And then I have other shows that I need to, develop as well. But those are the main three that I have on the site now. And eventually I will, have more once I, I'm done with the other big studio stuff.
Yeah, something I like about the idea of like people of color coming up with stuff, particularly like when I thought about the Pastor Pat thing, where there's a comedian and YouTuber that I follow where him and his friend at the time were trying to pitch something, and the joke was, because he's like a comedian and he started off as like a church comedian kind of, but he was saying that their skit was going to have a guy fall on the ground and they put like the white sheet over, and then but the white people didn't understand why that was funny, because they usually put the white sheet over women because of their skirts. And so the idea of like the cultural difference possibly being thrown in there, I like the idea of people of color and people from different backgrounds like creating things so that there's maybe a chance of like, oh yeah, if you go to church, if you go to a Black church, that.
Yeah, it's like you were saying, it's one of those things. That's why you hear the same diversity and whatever, but those things are great. It's like like I said, it's there's the things that you can write as a woman or bring to the table as a woman that I can never bring because you are a woman, and then as a Black woman, there are certain nuances that you could bring that I will never be able to bring, and I think having people, even if the show is something else, but having various sorts of people to the table, then like you say, it could be more authentic, more real, more less stereotypical, because you have people who are actually lived it or who are, or so familiar with it that they can say, oh, no, don't do that. That's not what the culture does. Or do this, this would be, the culture actually find that funny and not offensive, or no, the culture find that offensive and not funny. You need those voices and those hands in there so that the finished product can have such an authenticity to it that it will reach its target audience, I believe in targeting audiences, but then also, me growing up, I've been attracted to things that weren't targeted towards me, and just, I guess, Blacks as a culture, even the fashion like Timberland and with Tommy Hilfiger, those things weren't technically marketed towards us, but then, we get it and flip it and make it something totally different. So I believe the same can be with us. It's like we can do something for ourselves, and it can also possibly, go cross over to other people, because again, I think if something is good and of quality, then it will attract, it will attract anybody to it. But like you were saying, it's like those nuances were, those things need to be put in there.
So how have you used your various positions to insert more diversity into projects? So I saw some of your Hollywood zombie trading cards you did, and a lot of the celebrities chosen were Black. So
I'm sorry.
Do you like do that on purpose, or like?
well, unfortunately for that one, I just had a list. I had no creative input in that one. That was just they gave me a list of people to do, and I did them. But on some shows, if I'm directing, I've been able to, on some occasions, I would say many occasions, to put in a good word for like some of my art friends who are good. It's not like, oh, I'm just, here's this cronyism that you're bringing in your friends who are not quite. No, it's like, no. A lot of times directors get these jobs, and then sometimes the studios will be like, hey, do you have a crew that you work with, or do you have a particular person that you think might be pretty good for this fit, for this job? And sometimes, if that's presented to me, it's not, all the times that doesn't happen, but if it does happen, I will say, hey, here's this guy here. He's really good at doing this particular A, B, C, D, E. And I've been able to bring in, a few people that I know who are really good. That's why I say I emphasize, it's just like I'm bringing in people because I'm cool with them. No, they're really good. And sometimes, maybe their way, just like what Ron did with me, it's kind of like, they maybe going through the front door didn't work. Maybe, I don't know, maybe the wrong person saw their work or didn't see their work or whatever. But sometimes if that happens, I like to bring in the right person for the right job, and then a lot of times people who I know, who I work with, you kind of get to know their work ethic and you get to know what they do. Now, I'm still growing, I'm still learning. And so it's not like that will be like every job, but there are some jobs where you're like, oh yeah, this person, I know that person would be a perfect fit for this because that's all they do, that stuff in their sleep, but the studio doesn't know them. And so I might be, but again, I don't have the power to hire anybody. Eventually the artist that I recommend has to show that they're capable of doing the work. But, I try to use a position like that, to possibly bring in, like you said, bring in a different voice or whatever that possibly might not be able to have that space.
So you create a lot of drawings based on current events, whether it's someone who's recently passed or something like the inauguration. So you kind of went through it with explaining that you worked in commercial work, but what skills can you suggest that other people hone so that like you can literally draw things at will? So like how can other artists hone those skills? What tips can you give them to do that?
Well, I'll give the tip that I had growing up was that, like, I'm giving old school Disney tip. Like back in the day, Disney used to say that if you can draw the human figure, you can draw anything. Like if you can understand human and animal anatomy, and if you're just really good at understanding life drawing in general, it's easy to exaggerate what you know. So it's like, if I know how to draw a human face and I understand how the body and all the bones and muscles work on the human figure, and I can draw that realistically, then to characterize it or to exaggerate it or to make a cartoon version of it, from the old school Disney perspective, they were like, well, it's easier to learn that versus you only knowing how to draw a cartoon or draw a certain style. Then all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, how do you take all that? How do you take that style? And then now you need to draw that in this style. Sometimes some people can do it. Some people are able to, like, not necessarily draw the human anatomy realistically. Some people are able to just adapt styles and they can just flow like that. But from my perspective, I think the reason why I'm able to adapt to various styles is because I have certain foundations and just natural figure drawing, animal drawing, anatomy. I still need to brush up on my on my environments, but I'm still learning. Growing up, that was my main forte were figures, were humans, animals, or creatures and things like that. But that's one thing I can give to them. And another thing is to that helped me with drawing various styles is that if I'm working on a project that has a style that I'm not familiar with, one of the things that I literally do before I start like branching out, drawing it on my own, is that I will take the model sheet and just trace it. Like I'll take and just trace it. And for me, it's like, it's not like I'm drawing it for the job. I'm drawing it to just understand all the shapes and everything involved in the character. So I will trace it, excuse me. And then once I'm done tracing it, I'll take that same drawing and then I would draw it without tracing it based upon what I learned by tracing it. And then once I'm done drawing it without tracing it, I will put my drawing on top of the drawing on the model sheet and see how close I got to it. And if there were any imperfections and things like that, then I would like take mental note to say, oh, okay, well, the hair is shorter than how I drew it, or that eye is a little bit bigger than how I drew it. And that's what helps me to understand how to develop how the style works. Like back in the day, and we still do it, but a lot of times we had style how-to like style guides. You'll have a basic model sheet too, but then you'll have like a bunch of different sheets saying this is how you draw the hand, this is how you draw the eyes, and they will literally draw those things so that you will understand why that hand needs to be drawn this way or why the hair needs to look this way. Some jobs don't have that, and some jobs do, and I know a lot of times because everything is rush. You got to get everything done, so possibly that could be a reason. But when I do that tracing and then I do my drawing and I put my drawing on top, that's me trying to draw my own model sheet of how to make things look like the character and look on model. And then a lot of times too, you have a good supervisor and director on the job, or if you're not on the job, you just show it to another artist. They'll ask someone to critique it. But for me, it's like when you have that person who does know and understand the style, and they're looking at your stuff and they're giving you notes. That's another way to help you, hone, focus and get the style right. So I would suggest those two things. Learning, understanding like the foundations of basic life drawing. Go out and keep a sketchbook and do what we used to call a cafe drawing, when you're observing life. And back in the day, I don't know how it is now, but we used to go to the mall, go to the zoo. We have our sketchbooks, and we'll just draw people sitting down, or folks doing things, and it's more like a visual diary, so that when we're animating or drawing special poses or coming up with ideas, you can go back and look at your sketchbook, or go in your visual memory files to gather that information that you got while doing your cafe drawing. So those are things like that. And don't be afraid to show to artists. I remember I've reached out to a few artists who I didn't even know. I just literally emailed them, and people do that with me too. I literally emailed them and asked them like certain art questions. Sometimes I get responses, sometimes I didn't get responses. But the worst thing that can happen is that you don't get a response, or they say no. The best thing that can happen is that you actually get a response, and someone with some industry knowledge or experience can give you some wisdom or some understanding of how they approach things in art. So I really love how this is set up. I really like how they're good artists. They're good artists who want to spread knowledge, spread the wealth.
Yeah. So, as someone who has some years in the animation industry, what have you decided is your purpose in regards to building up other Black professionals in animation?
Well, I think now I'm slowly but surely just focusing on being more on the creator side versus the just working at the studio side. But a lot of things that I try to do, I do a lot of things, and I'm not going to name names because they don't know, but I've referred many artists, Black artists and directors to people, so, and it's not like a thing where I am a nepotism type thing. It's kind of like I'm working on a project. Somebody contacts me through email, say, hey, we're looking for an artist to do A, B, C, D, E. And I'll say, well, I'm not available. Here are a few people that I recommend. And I don't know if they got the jobs from recommendations, but I've done that. I've done that since I've been in the industry. It's like I've recommended people all the time without me telling them, hey, I recommend you for a job. So if they call you, it was me who did. I anonymously done that with artists, and some artists, I don't even have like a relationship with. I just like their work and things like that. Because people have done it with me. I've been referred to like folks I have no relationship with. They just like my art, and they're like, oh, someone referred you and said that you might be a good fit, and that's how it worked out. So I've done that a lot, many times. And then I've also supported like Kickstarter campaigns. I've supported many Kickstarter campaigns of like people who want to do things. And also just like you were saying with the with the BlkWmnAnimator page, every time I see a job, I'm literally posting it all the time, so I do it through like just personal emails, through like supporting artists through their like crowdfunding, and also providing links to job positions so that, if people want to work at studios, they have like, they can't say, oh man, I don't know where to go, because these studios are posting work I'd say every week, or at least every other week, I see a job posting at a studio. So I try to like reshare and post and let people know, hey, this studio is hiring for character designers, or they're looking for storyboard artists if you're ready, stuff like that.
Can you talk a little bit about your experience with Garbage Pail Kids? I know that's like huge in some circles, and some people might know your name because of that.
Yeah, that one right there. I started working on Garbage Pail Kids in 2005. I'll tell the story of this. All my story. I'm telling these stories because people who, like, if you submit at studios or companies and you either get rejections or you don't hear back from them, I share these stories to let you know a lot of work that I got was like through the back door, through the side door, not necessarily through the front door. But long story short, I was working on a project with the Wayans brothers, and they were at Comic-Con doing a site. Well, I was working on a book with them, and they did some work with Topps. They had a trading card series, I think, called The Dozens, and they were doing a signing at the Topps company booth. Topps company makes Garbage Pail Kids, and they were doing a signing at the Topps booth, and they also had a panel discussion about their films, and so my nephew was at Comic-Con and he wanted to meet the Wayans, and I was like, oh, I can introduce you to him. And what happened is that the Wayans brothers, their panel discussion went way over. So they were not able to make it to the Topps booth. And I had been waiting at the Topps booth for like a long time, just waiting. And, while I was there, I was talking to like some of the people at the booth. And I didn't know at the time, like two of their art directors were there. and so they were like, oh, one of the guys was like, oh, we just got word. One of the guys, Jeff Zapata, and Ira Friedman, I think was the other guy that was there, and John Williams. And so Jeff Zapata, who was the art director at the time, says, hey, you've been waiting here all this time. And I had my portfolio on me. He's like, is that your portfolio? You should at least show us your portfolio since you waited here all this time for the Wayans brothers. So I was like, okay. And I showed them the portfolio, and I had a lot. I didn't have Garbage Pail Kids stuff in there, but I had I did some caricatures. I had like real painted caricatures. And he goes, are those painted or are those digital? I said, no, they're traditionally painted. And he was an art director that I really liked, because some art directors, they only like, some art directors, if you have a style that they're looking for, then they can recognize, oh yeah, he can do it. And then there are other art directors that can look at a person's portfolio, and they may not necessarily have the style of the show or whatever they're doing, but they can look at something there and say, oh, oh yeah, they can do that, they can do this. And that was those things. He was like, oh, if you can paint traditionally like that on those caricatures, I know you can do this type stuff. So that's how I got connected with them. It was one of those things, and they presented it as a test. They were like, hey, we're looking for artists to work on Garbage Pail Kids. The cool thing is that what we're going to give you is a win-win situation. They're like, hey, we'll give you a paid test to see if you're able to do it. If you're able to do it and the card looks good, we publish it. And if you don't, if it doesn't look good, we'll still pay you for the test, but you're not going to get the job. So that's how I got started. Now after Comic-Con, they sent me my first painting to do, which was a test. And they liked the painting, and the first painting ended up being a card. And from there, I've been, working with them since. And I found out, like you're saying, there's a huge fan base. I didn't know. I grew up seeing Garbage Pail Kids, and as a kid, and I knew about them. I was actually a fan too, but I didn't know that, like, in the 2000s, that they were still like huge fan base. I just thought that, okay, well, it was just something more of a nostalgic 80s thing and not anything that people are doing now. But yeah, that thing is huge. It was huge, literally all over the world. When I started working on the series, I got contacted in emails from literally people from all over the world who wanted me to do like sign cards or do commissions or sell artwork. It's and they're good. It's that fan base too. There's like a they're tightly connected as well. It's like when you go on the forums, you notice that all the same people are on the same forums, and a lot of friends. And I've actually become friends with some of the Garbage Pail Kid collectors as well. So just like the animation industry, that fan base is it's huge, but then there's also like they're also connected as well.
Yeah. So what do you hope for the future of animation as far as innovation, storylines, and characters?
Well, I like the narrative that's going on now, which it's always been there, but I think now, because of different outlets and streaming services, more people are getting it, is that animation is not necessarily for kids in the US. Outside the US, people know that, but for some reason, if you say you do animation, everyone thinks you're doing things for kids. Now, you can be doing things for kids, but it's like anything else. It's just a genre. It's a medium. It's a form that can be translated for preschoolers, tweens, teens, adults, and I hope that moving forward that, certain styles and trends don't become the lock-in. It's kind of like creativity becomes the lock-in. And I'm starting to see it. Netflix has shows. You see, like the shows that they're doing, the styles are different, the content's different. They're doing things for kids and the preschoolers, and they have adult shows. Of course, Disney, they have their target audience, so they can't go too crazy. But overall, in the animation industry, it would be great, and I think it's going that way. I really do. Is that we have the medium, and the medium can be used for wherever the creators do it for, and there's no standard style that represents animation. There's no standard story. It's like anything else, just like you don't say a live action movie, live action movie has its genres, it has kids section, the sci-fi, the comedy, it's all these various forms of live action movies that, I think now animation in the US, and I specifically say US because, we know studios outside the US, they've already learned that. they're already, they already do full adult movies that are like animated. So I'm really hopeful because of, like I said, because there's so many platforms for that to be spread about, and people have so much access, so that they can like that fan base can connect with where that genre is, and the studios are seeing it. There are people doing these things on their own, and it's like, wow, this person's on YouTube and they have millions of followers and fans. They're seeing it, and that's the cool thing. It's that we as creators, we have the power to kind of dictate. How they say, life imitating art or art imitating life. I think as creators and the platforms we have, we can do certain things, and if there's a fan base for it, these studios see it. You see, I'm not going to name things, but you've seen it before, where something takes off and becomes big, and it organically becomes big because there's a fan base, and then a big studio comes in and wants to cash in, or wants to, hey, we want to do our version of it, or they actually buy the product and now they own it, or they're promoting it. So that's where I see animation going. And that's why I hope, I think there's so many, like you're saying, more voices, more hands, more people having their place and telling their story. I think that's just what's going to happen. It's just going to be, wow, all these various sources and various animations that we all can choose from.
So my last question, if someone was producing a documentary about you, what things would you want them to highlight about your life outside of art and animation?
Oh, wow. Well, I am a spiritual guy. I love, I believe in God. I believe in divine intervention and things that are not coincidence. Also, I believe in giving, sharing the wealth as actually an animator, director, producer, Frank Molieri. Hopefully, I'm pronouncing Frank's last name right. He's a good friend, but he said the same thing. I used to stay, and I would say it's real quick. I used to have to work late nights at Klasky Chupo commercial. I used to do that a lot when I was young because a lot of times I didn't know, I didn't know how to do. So I would stay after work to try to figure it out. And Frank saw me standing there. And he just saw, hey, he was like, hey, how come you're not going home? It's like, oh, I'm just trying to figure out this. And, he worked at Don Bluth, all these big studios. And so he kind of just started showing me some insider stuff. And, but she said, before I tell you some of this stuff, and I said, I only require you to do one thing. And I was like, what? He's like, share the wealth. He's like, he had mentioned, he's like, 2D animation at that time, he's like, 2D animation is it's dying out. No one's really doing this style of stuff. So in order for it to breathe and live, we have to, all the information has to continue to be shared with other artists so that it doesn't die out. And so I would like that to be known with me. It's like, I was the type person that, if you came and talked with me, I didn't hold things in. I was able to share and be able to be a help to someone else.
Yeah. Cool.
That's
anything else in your documentary?
Well, just say that I was a good person, a good man, and hopefully contribute something that was worthwhile, Good husband, good whatever, whatever it is, that's all good.
So where can people find you on the social medias and the interwebs?
Well, I do. Well, I have to spell it out because my website is my last name, but my main website.
I'll have it in the description as well. So.
Oh, okay, all right. Well, I have a Facebook page, Instagram. Let's see. Well, if you put all that stuff in the link, I have on the website. I have links to all that stuff. Twitter. It's usually my name. It's Layron DeJarnette. The Instagram is Layron.DeJarnette. And it's funny. The Twitter is my name too, but my last name was so long that I wasn't able to add the E. So it's Layron DeJarnette without the E at the end. And then since you're adding the web stuff, like I said, I do have my portfolio website for the studios, and then I have the other website, which is me trying to do my own personal IPs. So that will be down in the links, stuff like that.
All right. So I would like to thank you for coming on my platform and allowing me to highlight you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you. I really appreciate the invite. And hopefully, there are some things that were said and done that will help other people. My main thing is that the industry, it is hard to get in, but then sometimes if you can't get in the front door, you got to try the side and back door. That's usually what happened with me. It was always something I connected with, who knew that I was, wanted to do certain things. And again, it's not about, you have to be talented. Bottom line is you have to be able to deliver. This is the only field where you can't fake it. People say you can't fake the funk. It's like, you're going to be placed in situations where you're going to have to really deliver. And you don't want to waste that. You don't want to have an opportunity where you're working at a big studio and you have a gift of gab to get you in the door, but then when it's time to deliver, you don't have the skill level. Right. So it's always best to really make sure your craft and your skills are together, and it will happen. I think if you're good and you're persistent and you connect with the right people, that it will happen. And even if it doesn't happen, hey, you got crowdsourcing and you just do it yourself. Things can happen. I'm always optimistic though. I think if you're passionate enough and you follow whatever path that you need to go on, at the very end, all things will work out for your good.
So to everyone out there, I want you to like So I Know It's Real, comment and tell me how you feel, subscribe to Seal the Deal, and sign up for post notifications to show your zeal. And I'll see you in the next video. Peace.
Peace. Bye.